Hello YouTube. So in today's video I wanted to talk about something once again. And I did a little research before making this video because I want to make sure I give accurate information, and the internet in general can be kind of an inaccurate source of information. You should always take anything you hear on the internet with a grain of salt. A healthy amount of doubt, that is. But assuming that this research I did on the internet is actually correct, again, why assume that to begin with, but hopefully it is. I Googled it, and it gave an AI response, because AI has been around for a few years now. And I was kind of wondering, why is it that I get to start a job that pays more, but yet I can't seem to land a job that is a little bit easier, but it also pays a little bit less? And as it turns out, there is such a thing as overqualified. Because employers, even if they seriously consider you for the role that they're trying to fill, they want to make sure that you're just qualified enough. Not too little, but also not too much either. Because if you're too qualified, well then in theory, you might get bored easily, you might not fit in well with the people who are not as qualified, you might even be more qualified than the hiring manager themselves, in theory, according to the internet. So it's they want to find somebody who's just right, somebody who will be challenged by the job just enough. So then, as it turns out, the overqualified thing is actually a reason why someone might not be able to land a particular job, even if you're would be able to do it with flying colors, be able to do it easily. Then they might think well, this person would just take some other job that would require more out of them but also pay more, or at least in theory that's how it works. And to be honest, that's actually a good point, because most people probably would. Let's say if somebody takes a really low paying position that doesn't really expect much out of them, they'd get bored easily by it. And if they're offered a job that would pay more, well then they would just say, okay, well, I'll take the one that pays more. Because that's usually how most people do think. So, don't feel as though you should be discouraged, because let's say you go through the first interview, you pass that good, you go through a second interview, so at that point they've seriously narrowed down who would be the right fit. If you've even made it past the second interview, then it shows that you are already being seriously considered. But among those who make it past that, there would still be a number of people to choose from, because of how many applicants there are per job listing. And there are some that may not get the job, not because they weren't qualified enough, but because they were too qualified. Because in theory, if somebody's too qualified, then they could just leave as soon as they get a job that offers them better pay, in theory. Or even if they wanted to stick around, they may get easily bored, or maybe frustrated by candidates that are not as qualified, or maybe even come for the manager's job themselves, although that's normally not the case. But at least this is what the AI responses for Google were. So I don't want people to think that this is me thinking this. I'm just trying to do my research and then make sure I give accurate information. And hopefully it is accurate. So that is one of the reasons that somebody may not get a job. Not because they weren't qualified enough, but that they were too much qualified. Because let's say if they got a number of people, like 50 to 100 applications for one job listing. They make it past the first interview, well, some of them do. And then at the second interview, they've narrowed down to, let's say, 10 to 20 applications. I mean, of course, it can all vary depending on the job or the location or anything. But then among those, they want to pick somebody who's just qualified enough. Like the Goldilocks zone. And that's something that I just wanted to share today. Because again, I want to make my YouTube channel consistent, but also genuine. I'm actually going to be going back to a previous employer for training, starting at 2:30 in the morning. I don't want to say which previous employer because I don't want to give too much information on the internet about myself, even though I probably already did. Like, some of my driving videos show where I live, because that's where I start and then where I head back. But yeah, I should probably not reveal too much about myself, even though I am going back to one of my previous employers, and I really hope I do okay, you know? And it pays much better than some of these lower paying jobs that I did make it through the interview or even a second interview for. But then it made me kind of wonder, like, why is it that I would be able to go back to a job that would expect a lot more out of me, but not one that would be, like, easy as far as I was thinking? Because the kind of logic that I was thinking is, like, if I go for an easier job, well, then that would increase my chances of getting it. But then, as it turns out, that's not necessarily the case. You could actually be too good for the job, basically. Too good to be true. Or at least in their mind, they're thinking, like, you might easily get bored, not fit in well. You might go for a better job the moment the opportunity arises. You know, because they're thinking about long-term business model strategy. You want somebody who will stick around for a while, somebody who's just qualified enough. And anyways, it's already been like almost 8 minutes now, so I'm just gonna, that's my little talk for today. That's my spiel. The employers are looking for those who are not necessarily the most qualified, but the most suitable, as odd as that might sound. You know, they're looking for somebody who is just right. You know, not too qualified, not underqualified, but just right. Anyways, that's today's video. Have a good day or night. Bye. And wish me luck at my training. Goodbye.